In the dusty crossroads of Abilene, a lone stagecoach barrels into town at dusk, its horses wild with terror, its driver nowhere to be found. Sheriff Dawson MacLeod, a man haunted by secrets of his own, rushes to the scene expecting trouble, but not the kind he finds. Faint cries spill from behind the locked doors of the battered coach. When he finally pries them open, he's confronted by a trembling mail-order bride, her wrists bruised by tight ropes. Yet the biggest shock is not her plight, but the identity of the mysterious figure who locked her inside. Nothing in this frontier town will ever be the same again. Abilene, Kansas, 1878. Once upon a time it was a sleepy cattle outpost, but the arrival of the railroad turned it into a booming gateway to the west. Saloons, gambling halls, and the tantalizing promise of prosperity lured fortune-seekers from all directions. Yet for every good-hearted settler who roamed its unpaved roads, a dozen others arrived with a knife up their sleeve. Sheriff Dawson MacLeod knew all too well that the peace of Abilene was a precarious fiction. Dawson stood on the veranda of the sheriff's office, the late afternoon sun blazing on the horizon. He was a man of medium build, sporting a dusty brown Stetson, pulled low over a pair of keen grey eyes. Though still in his mid-30s, he wore the lines of worry on his forehead, like a seasoned veteran. He had served in the Civil War under Colonel Robert G. Shaw, a fact he rarely spoke of. Still, rumors circulated, painting him as a hero in hushed saloon whispers. The truth lay somewhere between bravery and tragedy. That day, tension hung thick in the summer air. Word had come by telegraph that a stagecoach from Dodge City was delayed. It was supposed to arrive in Abilene before noon carrying goods mail and a rumored passenger who might stir the local gossip mills, a mail-order bride promised to the wealthy merchant Duncan Farnsworth. Farnsworth was new money in town, rumored to have once been a Pinkerton detective. Some said he even had ties to Alan Pinkerton himself, but now he preferred to invest in rail lines real estate and occasionally discreet business dealings with the local bank. Something felt wrong about the stagecoach's delay. Disappearances out on the plains weren't uncommon. Highwaymen and bandits roved the area. Yet Dawson's instincts told him to watch the horizon. His deputy, a scrawny but quick-witted fellow named Clarence Wren Cutter, had gone out to scout for trouble, but the sun was inching toward the western horizon, with no sign of him or the stage. Dawson exhaled, scanning the deserted main street. At that hour, most folk retreated indoors to escape the blistering heat. Only Doc Mulligan's donkey brayed at the hitching post, and across the street, Madame Ruby opened the shutters of her mercantile. Then, as if from nowhere, a rolling cloud of dust caught Dawson's eye. It was the stagecoach hurtling toward town in a reckless, lopsided manner. The horses were foaming at the mouth, their eyes wild. No driver perched atop the seat. Alarmed, Dawson tossed aside his tin coffee cup. He sprinted into the street, waving his arms, trying to slow the horses. Wren Cutter emerged from an alley, similarly stunned by the runaway coach. Together, they raced to bring the team to a stop, their boots sliding in the dirt. After a moment of frantic effort, they managed to wrangle the animal's dust enveloping them in a choking haze. The side of the stagecoach was pock-marked with bullet holes. One of the rear wheels screeched terribly, threatening to snap off at any moment. Still, what chilled Dawson's blood most was the unsettling silence within. Where was the driver? Where were the passengers? As if answering his unspoken question, a muffled cry emanated from inside. Dawson exchanged a terse look with Wren, who ran around to check the driver's seat. It was empty. No sign of life but a bloodstain on the worn leather. Meanwhile, Dawson yanked on the door handle, only to find it locked from the outside. The door had been bolted shut with a heavy iron lock that didn't belong on any normal stagecoach. From inside came frantic pleas. A woman's voice, hoarse, desperate. Carefully, Dawson drew his sidearm, tested the lock, and realized they'd need tools to get it open without harming whoever was inside. In my office, he barked at Wren, who dashed off to fetch a crowbar. Dawson placed a reassuring hand against the stage door. "Hold on, ma'am," he called. "We're going to get you out of there." Her reply was tearful and incoherent, but he could pick out the words, "Help me," and "please." The cruelty of it tore at his gut. This was no random robbery or typical abduction. The stagecoach had been rigged like a prison on wheels. Wren returned, crowbar in hand. With 2 solid heaves, the lock snapped. Dawson yanked open the door to reveal a woman, dresses torn, ankles and wrists bearing rope burns. Her bonnet askew, she flinched at the sudden influx of light. Tears streamed down her grimy cheeks, and she all but collapsed into Dawson's arms. "It's all right," he soothed. "You're safe now." Her name, they soon learned, was Caroline Bennett. She was the mail-order bride destined for Duncan Farnsworth, and her tale of captivity was about to rock Abilene to its core. Caroline sat in the sheriff's office, trembling hands cupped around a mug of tea. Town physician Doc Mulligan, who had served under the famed Dr. Joseph Lister in an English hospital once upon a time, knelt beside her, tending to her bruises. Her hair was a golden chestnut, though caked with dust. Beneath the grime, one could see she was likely in her early 20s. Dawson watched her carefully from behind his desk, his heart heavy with concern. Wren leaned against the wall, arms folded, while the doc dabbed salve on Caroline's wrists. Miss Bennett Dawson began gently. "I know you've been through an ordeal, but can you tell us what happened out there? Who did this to you?" Caroline drew in a shaky breath. "We left Dodge City 2 days ago," she said, voice trembling. "The stage carried me 1 other passenger, and the driver, Joseph Montgomery. We hadn't gone more than a few hours when bandits attacked. At least I thought they were bandits. They wore bandanas over their faces." She paused, eyes flicking to the floor. "They shot Joseph. I heard him scream, and then everything was chaos. But they didn't rob me. Instead, they forced me inside the coach, locked it from the outside. They threatened me with guns, said if I screamed, I'd suffer the same fate as the driver. Then they took the other passenger, Mr. Bill Harrington from Pinkerton's, to the front. I'm not sure what they did to him, but I didn't see him again after that." Dawson frowned. Bill Harrington was a real Pinkerton detective known for his infiltration of outlaw gangs across the West. If these men had singled him out, it meant they had deeper motives than just petty theft. Caroline continued, a catch in her throat. "They left me alone in there for hours, maybe days, while the coach rolled. But I don't think they were the ones driving. When I finally managed to lift the window curtain, I saw only the reins tied around the seat, the horses basically leading themselves. And then eventually the coach jolted. I felt it tear through the brush. I still don't know how I ended up here." The room was silent, each man trying to comprehend such a puzzle. A traveling Pinkerton detective, a mail-order bride, a staged robbery with no money stolen. Doc Mulligan, in his gentle Irish lilt, said, "Poor lass. Must have been terrified." Caroline bit her lip. Why would they do this? Why take me hostage, just to abandon the coach? Dawson pressed his palms together thoughtfully. He had asked himself the same question. He turned to Wren. "We've got a driver missing and a Pinkerton agent missing. That's serious business. Then, returning his attention to Caroline, he asked gently, "Were you coming to Abilene to marry Duncan Farnsworth?" She flushed, nodding. "We'd exchanged letters for several months. Mr. Farnsworth seemed kind. He offered me the chance at a new life. I come from a poor farming family back in Ohio. The money he sent helped my parents keep the land. I was to arrive here, and we'd be married by Judge Sampson. But now," she trailed off, tears glistening. Dawson's expression softened. "We'll do everything in our power to protect you." The door opened just then, and in stepped a man wearing a tailored suit and gold-rimmed spectacles. His face was angular, and his hair was a precise sweep of black. It was Duncan Farnsworth himself, the fiance. He looked around with an air of barely contained panic. "Caroline," he exclaimed, dropping to his knees beside her. "Thank heavens you're safe. I've been worried half to death." His gaze flicked to Dawson. "Sheriff, how could this happen?" Dawson responded calmly. "We are still piecing that together, Mr. Farnsworth. But your bride has suffered a grave ordeal." Farnsworth offered Caroline a handkerchief, pressing her trembling hand in his. "I'm so sorry this happened to you. You'll stay at my house until you recover. I'll get you the best care money can buy." Something in Farnsworth's eyes, perhaps desperation or overshadowed guilt, struck Dawson as odd. But Caroline was too distraught to question his sincerity. She seemed relieved to have found her intended groom alive and concerned for her well-being. "All right," Dawson said, "but let's keep her location quiet for now. If these men are still out there, I don't want them knowing she's here." Farnsworth nodded, eyes narrowing. "Agreed, Sheriff. I'll hire extra guards if I must." No expense spared. As Farnsworth helped Caroline to her feet, Dawson reminded himself that Farnsworth was once rumored to have Pinkerton connections. Bill Harrington, also from Pinkerton, had vanished. Coincidence? Dawson's gut said otherwise. He'd keep an eye on Farnsworth for sure. Outside, as Farnsworth led Caroline away, Dawson and Wren locked gazes. There was more to this story than a simple mail-order bride's arrival gone awry, and Dawson suspected they had only scratched the surface. That evening, Dawson ambled through the flickering gaslight of the Abilene Main Street, the saloons bustling with noise. As the doors of the Starlight Saloon swung open, waves of raucous laughter and the twang of a half-tuned piano spilled out. He nodded at a few locals, but his mind was on the puzzle at hand. On a whim, he decided to pay a visit to Farnsworth's newly erected mansion on the outskirts of town. The structure had been completed just weeks earlier, with a white picket fence and a stable for Farnsworth's prized horses. Some townsfolk called it ostentatious new money, flaunting itself in an old settlement. Dawson knocked on the heavy wooden door. A manservant opened it, eyeing the sheriff warily. "Good evening, Sheriff. I'd like a word with Mr. Farnsworth," Dawson said evenly. The manservant hesitated. "He's not expecting visitors." Dawson flexed his jaw. "It's about today's incident. Important business." With clear reluctance, the manservant showed him into a parlor that smelled of freshly polished mahogany. Farnsworth soon entered, wearing a burgundy dressing gown, eyes circled with fatigue. "Sheriff," he greeted. "I apologize for not meeting you at the door. Caroline's resting upstairs. She's quite shaken." Dawson nodded, removing his hat out of courtesy. "I understand. I'm here because I have a few questions I didn't get to ask earlier." "By all means." Dawson studied Farnsworth's face, searching for any flicker of deceit. "You said you were worried about Caroline's stage being late. Did you send anyone to look for her?" Farnsworth shifted his weight. I sent one of my ranch hands, Luke McAllister, to the outskirts of town. He returned with no sign of the coach. I was about to organize a proper search party when she was discovered. You have no idea who might have orchestrated this, or why. A flicker of something anxiety crossed Farnsworth's eyes. No, I don't. But I've made enemies, Sheriff. Business rivals, mostly. Folks who'd rather I not continue expanding. I've run into trouble with the Freedmont gang a few times. They resent the land deals I've brokered. Freedmont gang. Dawson knew them, a scattered group of outlaws run by Jedediah Freedmont, known for livestock theft, extortion, and occasionally doing dirty jobs for hire. Farnsworth nodded grimly. Yes, they have a history of intimidating settlers. My acquisitions threaten their territory, so it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to ruin me, perhaps by harming Caroline. Still, I never imagined they'd stoop so low. Dawson regarded Farnsworth quietly. The Freedmont angle could be true, but it didn't explain the presence of Bill Harrington, the Pinkerton. He decided to press further. You used to have Pinkerton ties yourself, didn't you? Farnsworth's gaze flickered. Briefly, yes. Years ago, I worked small cases for the agency before pursuing my own fortunes. Would you have known Bill Harrington? A tense pause. By reputation only. He's more senior. I never met him face to face. Dawson let the silence linger. The manor's grandfather clock ticked in the background. Finally, Farnsworth sighed. I want to help, Sheriff. If you find Harrington, question him. Maybe he learned something that could implicate my business rivals. As for Caroline, I just want her safe. If there's anything I can do, let me know. Dawson tipped his hat. I'll do that. Good night, Mr. Farnsworth. As he left, Dawson's instincts refused to settle. Farnsworth was smooth, well-practiced in conversation. Yet Dawson sensed that behind Farnsworth's concerned fiance facade lay a man who might be far more involved in this fiasco than he admitted. Dawson walked back to town starlight, glimmering overhead. Memories of the war flickered in his mind, the stench of gunpowder, the desperation in men's eyes. It reminded him that nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. If Farnsworth was lying, the sheriff needed proof. Meanwhile, Caroline was living under Farnsworth's roof. For her sake, and for Abilene's, he had to tread carefully. Early the next morning, Dawson and Wren rode out of Abilene to find where the stagecoach had traveled. The plain was expansive golden grass rippling in the breeze. They followed the tracks the runaway coach had carved across the dirt. There had to be a site where it was attacked, shell casings, footprints, something. After nearly 2 hours of careful tracking, they arrived at a small rocky outcropping. The telltale lines of wagon wheels swerved violently here, forming deep ruts in the ground. Dismounting, Dawson and Wren spread out, scanning the area. It didn't take long for Wren to call out, "Sheriff, over here." He'd found the driver's seat thrown aside. The wood was splintered, and there were dark, dried patches that looked like blood. Dawson knelt to inspect them, jaw tightening. Joseph Montgomery didn't stand a chance. Together they found more evidence of struggle, a scattering of bullet casings. Dawson picked one up. .44 caliber. Standard revolver round. Could belong to outlaws or anyone, really. Or Pinkertons, Wren muttered. A short distance away, behind a low cluster of boulders, they discovered a battered fedora with the initials B.H. etched inside. Bill Harrington's hat. No sign of the man himself, though. Wren glanced at Dawson, who sighed. It means Harrington was definitely here. Whether he's alive or not is the question. Their next find was even more disturbing. Shallow graves, 2 of them. Hasty mounds of dirt suggested someone had tried to bury bodies in a rush. Dawson's stomach clenched as they exhumed the remains. The first, dressed in a bloody driver's uniform, was Joseph Montgomery. The second was an unknown man, perhaps in his 40s, wearing plain clothes. Wren covered his mouth, eyes watering. "Who the devil is this other fella?" Dawson grimaced, rummaging through the pockets of the second corpse. He found a small scrap of paper with cryptic handwriting. "Meet Farnsworth Midnight, Canyon Ridge." Dawson's heart hammered. Farnsworth's name was scrawled there in black ink. Rising unsteadily, Dawson exchanged a look with Wren. "This can't be a coincidence. Farnsworth's name showing up on a dead man near the site of the Stagecoach attack." Wren shook his head. "We got to question Farnsworth again." Dawson was silent, turning the possibility over in his mind. Farnsworth had implied the Freedmont gang might be behind this. But here was proof Farnsworth had some secret meeting, scheduled possibly with outlaws. If Farnsworth orchestrated this attack, why lock Caroline in the stagecoach? He carefully folded the note and put it in his coat pocket. "We'd best get these men to the undertaker, and we'll see if Doc Mulligan can examine them for more clues." All the while, a storm brewed in Dawson's mind. The puzzle was forming a twisted shape he hadn't expected. Farnsworth might not just be a victim or a concerned fiance, he could be the mastermind of something sinister. And Bill Harrington, if he was still alive, might be the only man who could confirm it. At sundown, Dawson decided to confront Farnsworth with the newly discovered evidence. He arrived at the Farnsworth Manor note in hand, but the manservant informed him Farnsworth was out on business and wouldn't return until late. Suspicious, Dawson ventured around the side of the house, peering through windows for signs of life. He saw no movement except a faint glow upstairs. Cautiously, he crept toward the back garden. A figure glided from the rear door, a woman in a robe. Caroline. She started when she spotted Dawson lurking in the shadows. "Sheriff!" She gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "You frightened me. What are you doing here?" Dawson stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Miss Bennet. I came to speak with Mr. Farnsworth. He's not home, so I—" Caroline's face paled. He left abruptly after receiving a telegram. He didn't say where he was going. A tense pause settled between them. Dawson weighed whether to mention the damning note. Caroline was caught in the middle, frightened alone. Yet perhaps she could provide insight. "Miss Bennet, might I speak with you privately?" Her eyes darted around. "Yes, but not here. Let's step into the garden." They slipped among the rose bushes, the moonlight outlining Caroline's delicate features. She looked exhausted, as though nightmares plagued her. "Sheriff," she said softly, "I appreciate everything you've done for me so far. But I sense you have suspicions about Duncan." Dawson took a slow breath. "I found a note on a corpse near the site of your stage's ambush. It indicated a secret meeting with Farnsworth at Canyon Ridge. I don't know what to make of it, but it places him close to that violence." Caroline's eyes widened. "That can't be. Duncan wouldn't do such a thing." But her voice wavered with uncertainty. "I understand your loyalty," Dawson said gently. "Yet I must consider every angle. Tell me, have you seen or heard anything unusual since your arrival?" She hesitated, recalling something. "Last night I woke from a nightmare and heard voices in the hallway. Duncan and another man. I only caught fragments of their conversation, something about Pinkerton meddling, money, a necessity to keep me safe. But when I opened my door, they stopped talking. The man left quickly. I've never seen him before, a tall figure, wiry hair. This was new. A tall man with wiry hair, Dawson mused. Could be Jedediah Friedmont or one of his men. Caroline's expression turned fearful. So you think Duncan is negotiating with outlaws? But why? Dawson glanced at the manor's windows. I wish I knew. Perhaps Farnsworth struck a deal for business or protection. But something went horribly wrong. Regardless, I need to confirm Farnsworth's involvement or innocence. Until I do, please be careful. He might not be the man you thought you were corresponding with. Tears glimmered in her eyes. I thought he'd rescue me from a life of hardship. But if he's behind this... Dawson tentatively placed a hand on her shoulder, offering comfort. We'll get to the bottom of it. For now, keep your guard up. If anything else seems off, come to me. Her voice trembled. I will. Thank you, Sheriff. He nodded, stepping away. The night air grew heavy with unspoken fears. As Dawson disappeared into the darkness, he couldn't help but pity Caroline. She'd come to Abilene expecting marriage, only to stumble into a conspiracy that threatened her life. Returning to his office, Dawson found Wren pacing outside, agitation evident in his posture. Sheriff, he called. Someone's waiting to see you. You'll want to hear this. Inside at Dawson's desk sat a rugged, broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed moustache. His clothes, though dusty, were of decent quality, and he wore a battered hat pressed to his chest. Dawson instantly recognized him. Marshal Wyatt Earp, a real historical lawman, known to drift from one trouble spot to another. Marshal Earp, Dawson greeted surprised. What brings you to Abilene, Wyatt? Earp rose, extending a firm handshake. Heard there was trouble. A Pinkerton man's gone missing. Bill Harrington. Pinkerton called upon the marshals for help. Now I'm calling on you for local intel. Dawson exchanged a look with Wren, who nodded warily. The presence of Wyatt Earp was a sign that Bill Harrington's disappearance had indeed rattled some powerful people. The Pinkertons were not ones to lose their own quietly. We've discovered Harrington's hat and a shallow grave with an unidentified body near the Stagecoach ambush site, Dawson said. Harrington wasn't among the dead, so we have hope he's alive somewhere. Wyatt Earp frowned, lines deepening on his brow. I know Harrington. He's resourceful, though he's ruffled plenty of feathers. Any leads on who might be behind it? Dawson hesitated. We have reason to believe Duncan Farnsworth, a wealthy businessman with rumored Pinkerton ties, could be involved. But we don't have proof. Earp set his jaw. Pinkerton suspects Farnsworth, too. Harrington was investigating Farnsworth's financial dealings out west. They suspected Farnsworth of running a smuggling operation with some band of cutthroats. Harrington was gathering evidence. A piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Farnsworth might have realized Harrington was onto him and orchestrated the Stagecoach ambush to eliminate him while conveniently locking Caroline away. Perhaps Farnsworth never intended to kill Caroline. She was his fiancée after all, but he needed to keep her from witnessing the confrontation with Harrington. Something had gone wrong, and the Stagecoach had careened into Abilene, revealing more than Farnsworth had wanted. Dawson exhaled. Marshal, I fear Farnsworth has deeper ties to outlaws than even the Friedmont gang. If that's the case, Harrington might be held captive somewhere, maybe Canyon Ridge, where the note indicated a midnight meeting. We need to check it out. Earp's eyes narrowed. Then let's do it. I'll accompany you. If Farnsworth is behind this, we'll arrest him." Dawson admired Earp's directness, but knew Farnsworth was cunning. The possibility of a firefight was high. "We have to be cautious. Farnsworth's men are numerous. Let's gather a posse, maybe 5 or 6 men we can trust. In the meantime, Farnsworth mustn't suspect we're coming." Earp agreed. "Fine. But we move swiftly. Every hour that passes Harrington's life may hang in the balance." As the meeting concluded, Dawson felt a surge of determination. With Wyatt Earp's help, they had a shot at unraveling Farnsworth's operation once and for all. Still, the stakes had risen. If Farnsworth realized they were onto him, he might dispose of Harrington if he hadn't already. Dawson prayed they weren't already too late. That night, under the cover of darkness, Dawson ran Wyatt Earp and 2 trusted townsmen. Nate Wilson and Hector Ramirez rode out to Canyon Ridge. The terrain grew rugged under the moon's pale glow. Eroded gullies snaked between jagged rock formations that jutted skyward like silent sentinels. The wind howled, carrying the distant hoot of an owl. Dawson kept his hand near his revolver, ever mindful that ambush could spring from any shadow. He glanced at Earp, whose cool expression betrayed neither fear nor excitement, only the confidence of a man used to dangerous pursuits. Half a mile from the ridge, they dismounted and tied their horses behind a thicket. Proceeding on foot, the posse advanced quietly. Soon they saw a flicker of light in the distance, lanterns dancing amidst the rocks. Wren whispered, "That must be them." Dawson nodded, crouching behind a boulder to peer through binoculars. Sure enough, a small encampment had been set up. Several horses tethered and a handful of armed men milling about. In the center, Duncan Farnsworth paced, conversing with a tall man, sporting wiry hair, Jedediah Friedmont, if Dawson's guess was right. The conversation carried on the breeze, intermittent words audible. "Need that Pinkerton out of the way. Sooner this is resolved, the better." The bride's presence wasn't part of the plan. Dawson's blood boiled. Farnsworth was indeed conspiring with Friedmont. Wyatt Earp looked grim. "I count at least 8 men. Friedmont's gang, likely." Dawson's eyes scanned the camp. "No sign of Bill Harrington." "We should circle around," he murmured. "See if they're holding Harrington somewhere else." The posse split into pairs, Dawson with Earp Wren, with Hector, and Nate providing cover from a vantage point. Step by careful step, Dawson and Earp skirted the perimeter. The men in the camp were busy conferring by the lantern. Friedmont occasionally laughed in a coarse, grating manner. Finally, behind a row of boulders, Dawson spotted a small cave entrance, partially concealed by scrub brush. A single guard stood outside. Dawson tensed. Why guard a cave unless something or someone was inside? Earp's gaze flicked to Dawson. Silent agreement passing between them. They needed to dispatch the guard quietly. Earp moved first, gliding in a low crouch. One well-aimed blow to the back of the guard's head, and the man crumpled without a sound. Dawson grabbed him under the arms and dragged him behind a rock. Cautiously, they entered the cave. Dim lamplight illuminated rough walls and a dirt floor. Farther in, they heard raspy breathing. Bill Harrington lay bound and gagged against the wall, eyes widening at the sight of the new arrivals. Dawson rushed to him, cutting the ropes. Harrington coughed and winced, massaging his wrists. Earp offered him a swig from a canteen. After a moment, Harrington croaked, "Thank God, I thought I was done for." Dawson quickly explained the situation. Voices hushed. Harrington nodded, trembling from exhaustion. "They ambushed the stage." Farnsworth realized I was investigating him. Friedmont was hired to do his dirty work. But Friedmont wants a bigger cut. They've been arguing about what to do with me. Earp frowned. So Farnsworth planned the entire Stagecoach fiasco to get rid of you. But the bride Caroline was just collateral. Harrington nodded sadly. She must have been on the same coach at the wrong time. Farnsworth insisted Friedmont keep her out of sight during the attack. Friedmont's men locked her in, but something went wrong, and the coach ran off without a driver. I overheard Farnsworth raging about it. Dawson's stomach turned thinking of Caroline's terror. We'll get you out of here. Then we take Farnsworth and Friedmont down. Harrington's eyes flashed with renewed determination. I have evidence. Letters Farnsworth wrote to Friedmont detailing smuggling routes. They're hidden in a satchel outside the cave. Friedmont bragged about stealing them from me. If we get them, Farnsworth will hang for this. Just then, footsteps echoed at the cave entrance. Dawson motioned for silence. Earp positioned himself by the wall, revolver cocked. A voice grumbled, "Earl. You there? Why's it so quiet?" A shadow fell across the entrance. In a lightning-fast move, Earp whipped his gun around the corner. "Drop it!" he hissed. The intruder froze, pistol half-drawn. Dawson lunged, knocking the man's weapon aside. The struggle was brief but fierce. Finally, the intruder slumped unconscious next to his fallen comrade. Harrington muffled a cough, eyes wide. Outside, they heard shouting. Friedmont must have realized something was amiss. Lantern light danced frantically. Dawson met Earp's gaze. "We've lost the element of surprise." Earp gave a curt nod. "Then we fight." Dawson, Earp, and Harrington emerged from the cave just as Friedmont's men converged. Gunfire erupted in the night. Wren and Hector joined from the far side, bullets whizzing overhead. The muzzle flashes illuminated fleeting images of carnage. Friedmont's men shouting curses. Farnsworth ducking behind a wagon. Earp returning fire with surgical precision. Harrington, still weak, took cover behind a boulder, rummaging for the stolen satchel. Dawson and Earp advanced in tandem, forcing Friedmont's gang to scatter. Friedmont hollered, "You double-crossing snake, Farnsworth. You said you'd keep the law off our backs." Farnsworth snarled back. "I didn't expect them to figure it out so quickly." Then he fired a shot at Dawson, the bullet pinging off a rock inches from Dawson's head. Dawson gritted his teeth. He fired twice, forcing Farnsworth to dive behind a fallen log. Friedmont took the opportunity to slip into the shadows, presumably to flank them. Wren's voice rang out. "Sheriff." "They're trying to circle behind us," Dawson shouted back. "Hold them off. We'll deal with Farnsworth." Amid the chaos, Bill Harrington found the satchel Friedmont had stashed near the cave entrance. It contained incriminating documents, receipts for goods, and letters detailing Farnsworth's involvement in smuggling precious metals through Pinkerton-monitored routes. The evidence, if delivered to a federal court, would doom Farnsworth. But Friedmont's men had them pinned, their bullets ricocheting. Earp and Dawson hunkered down, exchanging fire. Farnsworth, seeing the battle turning against him, made a dash for his horse. Dawson noticed the movement out of the corner of his eye. "We can't let him escape," Dawson barked. He vaulted over a rock, sprinting across open ground. Bullets zinging past, he tackled Farnsworth just as the man mounted. The two slammed to the ground in a swirl of dust. Farnsworth snarled, swinging his pistol. Dawson knocked it aside, landed a blow across Farnsworth's jaw, and wrested the gun free. Farnsworth spat blood eyes, blazing with hatred. "You have no idea what you're meddling in." Sheriff Dawson pinned him. panting. "I know enough. You set up your own fiance as bait just to get to Harrington." Before Farnsworth could reply, Friedmont appeared, rifle in hand. He aimed at Dawson's head. "Get off him, lawman!" Time slowed. Dawson stared down the barrel. Farnsworth smirked beneath him. This was the end unless someone intervened. A sudden shot crackled. Friedmont's eyes widened, and he toppled, clutching his shoulder. Wren stood behind him, revolver smoking, having fired just in time. Friedmont collapsed, cursing. Dawson exhaled relief, flooding him, and pressed Farnsworth's face into the dirt. "You're under arrest." Across the campsite, Friedmont's men broke ranks, some fleeing into the night under the onslaught from Earp, Wren, and Hector. Friedmont himself was incapacitated, though alive. Earp approached, reloading methodically. "We'll round up whoever we can," he said. "Nice tackle, Sheriff." Dawson locked Farnsworth's hands in irons, his heart still hammering. The confrontation was over, but the fallout had only just begun. Farnsworth glared, spitting out threats of lawyers and bribes. Friedmont lay wounded, cursing them all. Harrington staggered over, clutching the satchel. "We have everything we need to convict Farnsworth. He's done." Dawson rose, staring down at the man who nearly got Caroline killed, who had orchestrated a savage ambush just to silence a Pinkerton agent. Farnsworth looked pitiful now, his expensive suit-torn face bloody. "Where's your bride now?" Dawson asked coldly. "Waiting at home, trusting you. She deserves the truth." Farnsworth sneered. "She was just a means to an end. I needed a respectable front." Let her be damned. The remark kindled a flash of rage in Dawson. He forced himself to remain calm. "You'll have time to regret that in a jail cell." By daybreak, Friedmont's surviving men were locked up, and Farnsworth joined them in a makeshift cell behind the sheriff's office. Earp prepared to wire the authorities, confident Farnsworth would be tried for conspiracy smuggling, attempted murder, and kidnapping. Harrington, battered but alive, penned a detailed statement. Word spread through Abilene like wildfire. The wealthy Duncan Farnsworth had been arrested, believed to be behind a criminal network. Townsfolk gathered outside, gawking at the man they once regarded as an up-and-comer, a beacon of new wealth. Inside the office, Caroline Bennett sat pale and silent. She had demanded to see Farnsworth. Dawson, after some hesitation, allowed it under guard. Farnsworth stood behind the iron bars, seething with indignation. Caroline approached, trembling. "How could you?" she asked in a small voice. "You promised me a future. My parents counted on your support. Was it all a lie?" Farnsworth's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I had business to do, Caroline. You were convenient. I needed a respectable marriage to distract from my dealings. Your father's farmland was collateral. Don't look so shocked." Tears formed at the corners of her eyes, but they didn't fall. Her voice steadied. "You nearly had me killed. And that man, Bill Harrington, too." He scoffed. "Weakness has no place in this frontier. I offered you a better life, and you spurn it. Fine. You'll soon see how the world really works." Caroline couldn't bear more. She turned away, stumbling back into Dawson's office. The sheriff followed, concern etched on his features. "You all right, Miss Bennett?" She swallowed hard, summoning courage she didn't know she had. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm grateful to be free of him, though I feel humiliated and used." Dawson nodded, voice gentle. "He fooled everyone. But you're not to blame." She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. At length, She looked up, eyes glistening. Now what my family's livelihood depends on Farnsworth's payments. With him in prison, I don't know how to help them. Dawson's heart clenched. He thought of his own struggles after the war, how precarious survival could be. We'll figure something out. The Pinkerton agency might help you. Or the townsfolk, once they hear the truth, they might band together to support you. You've been through enough. Caroline managed a ghost of a smile. Thank you, Sheriff. Outside, Wyatt Earp conferred with Bill Harrington, discussing the next steps. Harrington approached, offering a handshake to Caroline. I'm sorry for your ordeal, Miss Bennet. Farnsworth manipulated us all. Once I file my report with Pinkerton, I promise I'll do what I can to see you're compensated. This entire operation was orchestrated on Farnsworth's deception. Caroline nodded. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. That means more to me than you know. Dawson watched them, a swell of relief in his chest. Justice was being served. But amid the relief, he felt pangs of sorrow for Caroline's shattered dreams. She had come all this way to be someone's wife, only to end up entangled in a web of crime. Still, she was resilient. He could see the steel in her eyes, the faint spark that refused to be extinguished. Maybe she would find her own path forward in Abilene, a path untainted by Farnsworth's treachery. In the days that followed, the Fremont gang was systematically disbanded. Some members, captured and interrogated, confessed to Farnsworth's role as ringleader. Fremont, recovering from his gunshot wound under Doc Mulligan's watchful eye, cursed Farnsworth for leading them into a fiasco. Farnsworth himself, awaiting a federal marshal's escort to trial, stewed in a local jail cell. Wyatt Earp lingered in Abilene just long enough to ensure the paperwork was in order. He gave a tip of his hat to Dawson. You've done good here, Sheriff. If you ever need a hand, look me up in Dodge City. Or maybe Tombstone, if rumors correct about Silver Strikes. Hard to say where the wind will blow me next. Dawson smiled. Safe travels, Marshal Earp. It was an honor. Meanwhile, Bill Harrington prepared to leave with Farnsworth in custody, intent on seeing the man brought to justice in a higher court. He too thanked Dawson, adding that he'd propose some Pinkerton-based restitution for Caroline, perhaps a small fund to help her family. She deserves that much, he said. The day they departed, Caroline stood by Dawson on the platform. She wore a borrowed cloak, her dusty mail-order bride's dress now thoroughly patched up. She gazed at the departing train with a mixture of relief and melancholy. Dawson offered her a supportive smile. You're free now. Farnsworth's shadow no longer hangs over you. She drew a shaky breath. I've been thinking, Sheriff. I'd like to stay in Abilene. I don't want to run back to Ohio with my tail between my legs. I'd rather find honest work here. Maybe as a seamstress at Madame Ruby's shop. Dawson's chest warmed with admiration at her resolve. If that's your wish, you'll have the town's support. Folks here, well, they might be rough around the edges, but they look after their own. She tilted her head, eyes shining with gratitude. I can't thank you enough for everything. You saved my life. He felt a slight flush creep up his neck. Just doing my duty, ma'am. Glad you'll be staying. They parted ways that afternoon. Caroline, heading for Madame Ruby's mercantile Dawson, returning to his office with a mind full of the future. The Stagecoach fiasco had tested his mettle and nearly cost innocent lives. But sometimes from the darkest turmoil, new beginnings emerged. As the golden haze of summer waned into the crisp clarity of autumn, Abilene began to mend. The town that had trembled under the shadow of smuggling and betrayal slowly came back to life. Fremont's gang, had been dismantled piece by piece, its surviving members now behind bars or sent packing on prison-bound trains. Their confessions, bitter and begrudging, painted Duncan Farnsworth not just as a businessman, but as a puppeteer of crime. The shock of Farnsworth's arrest still rippled through town. Some couldn't believe the refined man who wore tailored coats and spoke with charm had orchestrated kidnapping and murder. Others had long suspected his polished facade hid darker schemes. Either way, his name was now spoken only in hushed tones, or cursed outright at the saloons. Abilene's faith had shifted, no longer resting in wealth and influence, but in the steady hands of those who had defended justice when it mattered most. Sheriff Dawson MacLeod resumed his patrols with quiet purpose. Gone was the gnawing tension in his shoulders, though he remained vigilant. He was no stranger to chaos, but this time he'd helped contain it before it consumed the innocent. The townsfolk acknowledged him more, now offering handshakes, fresh-baked bread, or simply a respectful nod as he passed. His quiet heroism had won their trust. And then there was Caroline Bennett. In the weeks following Farnsworth's arrest, she transformed. No longer the frightened girl torn from a stagecoach, she walked the streets of Abilene with growing confidence. At Madame Ruby's mercantile, she stitched gowns, coats, and trousers with a skill that impressed even the pickiest customers. Some said her hands were magic. Others said it was her strength stitched into every seam that people admired most. Children flocked to her when she helped Victoria Chambers teach reading on Saturday mornings. She would kneel beside them, guiding their fingers along each word, her voice patient and warm. Many of the girls in town began to look up to her, not just as a teacher or seamstress, but as an example of resilience. Caroline's past wasn't erased, but it no longer defined her. And Dawson noticed. He'd see her haggling over fabric at the market or offering fresh bread to an elderly widow. Occasionally she'd drop by the sheriff's office with a jar of preserves or a newly sewn handkerchief. Each visit came with a smile. And though their exchanges were simple, "How's patrol?" or "I saw young Tommy Chambers chasing a chicken again," there was a comfort in them. One late afternoon, Dawson spotted her sitting atop the fence near the west pasture. A book in her lap legs, swinging idly. He approached with a casual nod. "Evenin', Miss Bennett." She looked up and smiled. "Evenin', Sheriff. I was just watching the sun settle over the hills. It's peaceful here." He leaned on the fence beside her. "Abilene hasn't had much peace lately. We're due for some." She nodded thoughtfully. "It's strange. I came here thinking I'd become someone's wife, that my life would be written for me. But now I'm writing my own story." Dawson admired that. "You've done more than most would have given what you've been through." Caroline turned to him, her eyes reflective. "I think I'll stay. This town may be rough around the edges, but there's something honest about it." He offered a small smile. "And it's better with you in it." Their eyes met, lingering a heartbeat too long before she looked back to the horizon. The wind stirred the hem of her skirt, carrying with it the scent of lavender from her hair. As the sun dipped below the hills, Abilene seemed to breathe easy again. A town once shaken by deception was healing one stitch, one handshake, one shared silence at a time. And somewhere in that stillness, something new was growing between the sheriff and the mail-order bride who'd come west expecting marriage, but found freedom instead. Seasons turned over Abilene like pages in an old journal. The memory of Duncan Farnsworth's betrayal began to fade from the forefront of daily gossip, but the ripples of his crimes lingered. He stood trial in a federal courtroom in Topeka, and Bill Harrington's compelling testimony, paired with letters and financial records seized from Freedmont's cave, sealed his fate. The judge's sentence was clear: life in prison for conspiracy kidnapping and attempted murder. For a man who once envisioned himself as a railroad baron, the clang of prison bars was the final echo of his ambition. Caroline Bennett read the verdict in a letter delivered to Madame Ruby's shop. She held the paper in trembling hands, emotions clashing relief, sorrow, and a flicker of vindication. The same envelope bore another letter, this one from Ohio. It was from her father, scrawled in familiar ink, telling her the Pinkertons had arranged a fund to cover their debts. Their farm was safe. Her parents would not lose their land. She wept alone in her room that evening, tears not of grief, but of release. Meanwhile, Abilene itself began to breathe easier. With the Freedmont gang disbanded and its leader awaiting trial, the streets were quieter. Dawson McLeod resumed his rounds with steadier shoulders. The townsfolk who once eyed him as just another lawman now greeted him with warmth. Shopkeepers offered him coffee, children waved at him, and even the saloon toughs softened their tones when he walked by. Caroline continued working at Madame Ruby's, but soon expanded her own tailoring service. Her needlework drew compliments far and wide. Miners, ranchers' wives, even school teachers brought her fabric and dreams. Some whispered that the young woman who came to town as a bride in distress had become one of its most respected citizens. She also volunteered to help Victoria Chambers teach reading to children, especially girls. They should know more than just cook and clean, she often said. Books saved me more than once. Dawson noticed the change in her, the quiet strength behind her laughter, the grace with which she handled her past. Occasionally they'd share dinners after a long week. Their conversations were no longer about crime or court hearings, but about future plans, books, or Dawson's dream of running for mayor one day. One crisp morning, Dawson stopped by the mercantile to replace his worn-out boots. Caroline greeted him with a bright smile. "You again," she teased. "Sheriff? I swear you just scuff these boots on purpose so you can come visit." He smirked, resting an elbow on the counter. "Maybe I just like your company more than my old boots." She laughed, a sound that filled the room like music. She knelt to measure his foot, then stood brushing dust from her apron. "You're lucky I haven't raised my prices yet." "I'd pay double," he said, without thinking. Her eyes met his. For a moment, words fell away. The sunlight spilled in through the windows, painting everything golden. "Thank you," she said at last, voice soft. "Not just for the boots, for everything." "We got through it together," Dawson replied. "That means something." It did. That morning, as the prairie wind danced through Abilene's streets and the train's whistle echoed in the distance, Caroline and Dawson stood side by side, two people scarred by the past, now leaning toward the future. Whatever came next, romance, respect, or simply shared purpose, they were no longer just survivors. They were builders of something new, and in a town that once welcomed her in chains. Caroline Bennett now walked free, strong and unafraid, beneath a sky that promised brighter days ahead. Thank you for joining us on this journey through gun smoke and grit, where Sheriff Dawson McLeod's courage exposed a treacherous plot, and Caroline Bennett's unbreakable spirit forged a brand new life in the heart of Abilene. Their story reminds us that even in the harshest frontiers, hope and justice can prevail. If you found this Wild West drama gripping, packed with mystery, heartbreak, and unexpected twists, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss another thrilling tale from the American frontier. And please share this video with fellow Western enthusiasts who crave the dusty roads, galloping horses, and the timeless struggle between good and evil. Together we keep these stories alive, preserving the legacy of the brave souls who shaped the West. Thank you, and until next time, ride tall, stay true, and keep the spirit of adventure close at heart.